Hi there, Chris here with another quick tip for y'all. In this video, we're going to be looking at creating a glowing eye effect. And so we're going to use a Necron Lord as our example here. Our trusty rusty Necron Lord here. And so the model, he was already painted in silver. Now I know a lot of people who want this glowing eye effect want it for the Necrons, but a word of caution is basically the glowing eyes only work really well if the model is fairly dark. And so to get us started, we're going to be using some Techless Blue with a little bit of thinner. You can also just use water as well. We're going to thin this paint down almost to not quite a wash consistency because it'll get away on us, but a fairly thin consistency, as we just really want to create some light layers, and we also want the undercolor, which being the metal, to show through in the Techless Blue. And so we're going to be using our fine detail brush, and with the Necron, because their heads are kind of like, they're obviously like skulls, the light effect works best when you just highlight above the cheekbone in the eye sockets, and then creating a little bit of ambience, whatever happens to be like around them, like their collar, their shoulder, if their head is turned, that kind of thing, where you're imagining this light source coming out. And so really when we're doing glowing eyes, it's really an OSL effect that we're doing. And as I mentioned before, if the model was a little darker, it would show up a little bit better. But because we had already gotten this guy to a silver, and well, we can see the glow effect, but it would be more prominent, especially when the background is darker. Like when you see these models photographed, often the background's darker, the model's got a fairly dark presence to it, and so the OSL works really well when those conditions are met. And so we move on to Lawthorn Blue. And again, we're going to be using a little bit of thinner, just to thin this down just a bit, just so it flows nicely. Not too much, obviously, because then it gets away on us and falls into the details and such, and so we don't really want that. And again, we're sticking with our fine detail brush, and essentially we're highlighting this. Now, when we laid on the first layer of Techless Blue, you could build up the layers gradually, working with a really thin paint, and build up the layers, and then with Lawthorn Blue build up the layers. But really quickly here, I'm just doing this really fast just to illustrate the effect. And so all I'm doing is I'm filling in the eye, because the inside his skull, he does have a big eyeball inside there, and so we're highlighting that. We're highlighting just the top of the eye socket. We're at the cheekbone. We're not illuminating anything on the forehead or the upper eyebrow, as that would create this kind of odd effect, and really the light would not emanate from his eye sockets in that fashion. With the Lawthorn Blue, we're going to be highlighting a bit of the shoulder and a bit of his collarbone, just to help create that illusion that there is light emanating. But again, under the lights and the model, it's not terribly easy to see, and maybe we'll have to do another one with a darker model, but here we are with this guy right now. So as you can see, we're just illuminating a bit of his collarbone and his shoulder, and it's really small, subtle highlights just along the edges. Really, this kind of falls into the category of, we study how light plays on objects and how it would move along an object. And you can just basically make it up as well, but often you're better off studying how light plays across an object, how light travels. Obviously, light traveling in a straight line, so you want to emulate that as much as possible. And next we move to some White Scar. Very little bit thinner was used, and this is just going to be very tiny. We're just at the corners of the shoulder pads, just tiny little dot in the eyes, and on the eye socket closest on the cheekbone. And so you can see we're just very minimally putting these little light dots in here. And because the paint is thin, it's not really a pure white sitting there. It's more of kind of a milky kind of white, but it's allowing that color underneath to show through, and it's just creating a little bit of illumination. It's not too much. We don't want this thing to feel more like headlamps or anything like that. It's really not the effect we want to go for. We want a nice subtle kind of glow. Also, other elements on the model also help with the effect as well. And you see here, I'm just putting a little bit more white scar down that hasn't been thinned, just so that I got more control. And I'm just filling in the center of the eye, creating that illusion that he's glowing. And that's essentially it for these. These are relatively straightforward. And it's not terribly complex. I think it would probably have been better to illustrate it on the center icon on his chest. And so you can see here, we're going to zoom in just a little bit so you can kind of get a better understanding of how I highlighted the areas. And you can see it's just a very subtle effect in the eyes. Too much blue and the effect would obviously be lost. And so hopefully you found that quick tip video informative and useful. For the next quick tip video, leave a comment below, or if somebody beats you to it, give that comment a thumbs up. And we'll see you in the next video. Happy wargaming.